Hello, everybody. I hope you're all keeping well, staying safe, and staying as mentally sane as you can during these circumstances, which are beginning to get quite trying. In this blog, I just wanted to talk about lockdown. What lockdown? How extensive is lockdown, and why are not all countries following the same route? I also wanted to talk about inflation as a result of all the stimuli, and just a couple of other things throwing it in there. Why Italy is hit so bad. That's the other topic. First of all, especially to my UK subscribers, I'd just like to say to you all, if you need any prescriptions from your doctors, I believe you can email in or order online, but bear in mind it's taking a long time to be processed. It may take up to 10 days to be processed and to arrive at your pharmacy if it's being sent direct to the pharmacy. So just to bear that in mind and be careful. So first of all, the lockdown. Sweden are not going this route. They are not having a lockdown at all. It seems the Scandinavian countries, their numbers are not exponentially rising. They're hovering around sort of 100 to 200, and they're not going for this lockdown. And yet it is a route that's being followed extensively in France, in Germany, in Spain, with not great results so far. But it isn't something that was followed in South Korea. There the mantra seemed to be test, 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 trace, 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 track people. Now, obviously, they already have the systems in place to do that, whereas we don't. But you just wonder how much this lockdown is absolutely necessary, and also how affected it will be. I am rather suspicious that they keep talking that it's going to be 3 weeks, because how can they possibly know this? Tracy R., you said in Australia the heat isn't killing it, and I quite agree. I see no evidence in any other hot countries, from Singapore to the African countries to South America, that heat or humidity or any climatic factor has a huge influence on this. And also, if you're in a building with air conditioning, surely that's like being on a cruise ship. It'll just circulate it and magnify it. In Russia, they may be lying about their numbers. I believe there's a rumor going around China that there are millions of people suffering from it in Russia, but then you can't really believe that, can you? Just wanted to throw in at this point, they are talking in, it was on the podcast Laowhy 86. I've mentioned that one to you as before. It's spelled Laowhy 86. Now, there's some guys, I won't go into detail, but they've lived in China, they're now living in the US, and they were saying that the mobile phone data, when they backtracked it, because China have 3 big mobile cell providers, and they've lost the main one, the most popular one, China Mobile or China Cell, has lost 8 million subscribers. And this has never happened before. Going back as long as there's data available, they've never lost that many subscribers. Turns out the other providers have also lost subscribers. One explanation was that they were moved to 5G and therefore they didn't need the 4G. However, that doesn't really tally because most of these providers do 5G as well. There were some other excuses offered as well. But, who knows? I mean, 8 million... It could be the regular amount of deaths in China. You don't know, but if they've dropped 8 million before, it seems quite a big drop. Obviously, I'm taking that at face value. It's an interesting little piece of information that may give us an insight into how well China really got control over this. 8 million seems a lot of people to die in 2 months. It's probably because the virus has been going on for a lot longer than 2 months. The guy on that show, I don't know what his real name is actually, anyway, but probably should find out. I just think of the website name anyway. He was also saying that he found an advert for a job opportunity working at the Wuhan Biolab Institute for someone who was proficient in English and who was able to study viruses as they relate to bats and to humans and the possible transmissibility between the two. Apparently, bats carry the most viruses of any mammal, and they're very resistant to these viruses. So basically, the advert was for someone who had a PhD in virology who could come and study that in Wuhan. That advert was placed in November. So it seems rather strange that when we get to December, we're being told, we have this virus, it's sprung from bats to humans. So that was also just an interesting tidbit. So what I'm thinking here, I see the stimulus package has been passed in America. I don't know yet what sort of kind of blackmail the Democrats had in order to get it, because I know Joe Biden wanted his Green New Deal, or AOC's Green New Deal, included as part of the package. Some of the Democrats also wanted provisions for digital money, which is really interesting to me because when we talked about Uranus in Taurus, Uranus representing change in electricity, electronics, Taurus representing money, I said perhaps, well, Uranus is in Taurus, which it will be because it's been in for a year, for another sort of 6-7 years, we may see the end of the current way we work with money, use money, moving to crypto, digital, moving away from cash. And it would definitely seem that if Pelosi did manage to insert that digital currency clause in there, it could be another step towards using a digital currency rather than cash, which is of course is really it's an assault to our fundamental freedoms, rights, and privacy because everything's traceable. You can start latching on a social score to your bank statement. Then they can either limit your money, stop your money if you haven't been a good little girl or a good little boy in the eyes of the state. So that's quite a worrying thing. It's obviously something strong in the Democrats' mind, and it just shows you how they're trying to manipulate this situation for their own political ends, which is something I don't think a lot of the media are really covering. So let's look at this lockdown. So, for example, we have all the public servants working, all the police, obviously everyone in the NHS. You've got public services, trains, anything that's nationalized, people tend to be working. You have all these 5 million volunteers that have now volunteered their services, so they'll all be traveling around using their cars and working. I mean, it's laudable. I think it kind of harks back to the Dunkirk spirit of, everyone get your boat and go and help rescue. I think that's harking back to that. It's really great that all these people volunteer. But again, where's the social distancing? Is that going to make things better or worse? It's an extra 500,000 people buzzing around. You also get the thing, looking forward, who's really going to want to be self-employed or work in the private sector? Because if we're going to have these lockdowns again for another virus or another reason, you're the person that's hung out to dry. If you're a teacher or you work for the state, you'll still get your salary. You may keep your job or still stay working. Then, of course, we have all the supermarkets open, obviously, and the pharmacies. But then there's the issue with all the logistics, all the supply, all the transport. Then you obviously have to have mechanics working, because if the delivery vehicles break down, you've got to have your ports open so you can get all your imported food and products. The airports still have to be open to get your imports. Farmers, obviously, still working. Slaughterhouses, sort of Tetra Pak or plastics, or anyone who makes containers to put the food in. Never mind everyone who manufactures the food. People who, say at the dairies, those machines have to be maintained. So all those engineers are still working. So we're looking at a vast volume of people working. The lockdown really affects the shop fronts and the offices. So visually, it feels like a ghost town. Visually, you look at the shops, they closed. It doesn't feel like people are working. But really are a lot of people moving behind the scenes. And can we really monitor whether the social distancing is taking place or the virus is being contained? We don't know. Also, what else? Construction workers, big grey area. That seems to be going on fine. I'm just wondering again about the testing. We hear the UK trying to develop more tests. We see in America they had to order tests from South Korea because they're having a problem developing tests. So again, I ask you, if in the beginning, back at the 1st of January after this was discovered, where did the World Health Organization get all these tests? All of a sudden. We just heard about this in the new year, but suddenly there were all these testing kits that could be sent out to the people on the Diamond Princess, to the Japanese over there, to China. Millions of, well, I don't know about millions, but thousands and thousands of test kits available. How were they magicked up? Sure, maybe they were concocted quickly, they weren't very good, but it's still a question mark in my mind. They seem to be awfully ready with those initial tests. As I say, talking about what's still open, Post as well, and all the stores are still doing mail order. If you're in the UK, you can still go and order at Marks and Spencer, Next, whatever, get your items sent. So all those people who pack your clothing or whatever wares you're buying and send it in the post, that's all still going on. So I wonder how serious they really are about the lockdown. So next, let's talk about Italy and why Italy has been hit so bad. So Italy has a very old population, even older than Japan. So it's one of the oldest in the world. In fact, Italy, with their lots of boomer population and their very small birth rate or low birth rate, are becoming an endangered species, and also smoking is still relatively popular in Italy and also in Spain, who have a very similar problem to Italy. So it could be why Spain and Italy also hit very bad, as the whole smoking thing, anti-smoking thing, was more of an Anglo thing. You know, in America and the UK, it's been infradig for a long time, as South Africa and Australia, but it's still quite popular in Mediterranean countries. That might have affected it. Also, there's a lot of vertical integration where families live together, socialize more together between the generations, which may not be such a feature in this country or in America. Apparently, this attacks people with blood type A more than other blood types, and there's a very high proportion of A blood group in Italy and also in Armenia. Armenia has the highest proportion of type A blood. So we'll watch to see how this takes hold in Armenia. So they're talking a lot in the media now about how younger people can be affected and can even die. Obviously, they're hyping it up to get young people to take it more seriously. However, we're talking about a generation of young people who could potentially be one of the most unhealthy generations. In the UK, if you've watched Geordie Shore, or in America, Jersey Shore, you see how a lot of young people behave. It's all about the drinking culture. I can remember quite a few years ago when George Best was dying in hospital of liver damage because of alcoholism. If any of you don't know, George Best was a very famous Northern Irish footballer, played for Man United, one of the most famous footballers in the UK, and he passed away because he was an alcoholic, basically. And when he was in hospital, the doctors on the ward said the sad thing is that there were a lot of 26-year-olds who were as bad as him. And he was in his 60s by then. So it shows that the modern culture of drinking, especially I'd say in the UK, maybe Ireland, I'm not sure how bad it is in the US, has really damaged the health of our youth. Plus the fact that I think I was probably one of the last generation whose moms stayed at home and cooked and make food. We've got a new generation who've grown up eating school meals, which is well known in the UK, cost less than a prisoner's meal. They're not very healthy. Kids don't get a good meal at home. You know, there's a lot of fast food, fried food, bad food, lack of knowledge about nutrition. So we really have one of the least healthy groups of young people, plus they over-vaccinated. You know, whether you agree with vaccines or not, I think we are at the point where people are getting too many, and it's dulling down the immune system. So I mean, the aim, I think, with this corona thing is to take care. We don't know if it's a bioweapon, so we don't really want it in us, but to look after ourselves before we get to the stage of hospitalization, because once you're in hospital, you're not going to get vitamins, you're not going to get good food. You've got to stock up on your vitamins now and just get a healthy mentality, get a bit of sun, get a bit of exercise, eat as well as you can. Although I am beginning to wonder about food security going forward, because what is going to happen? Logistically, there are going to be problems, especially with countries close by to us shut down, and countries further away like South Africa, where the UK do import a large amount of food supplies, fruit and veg from South Africa, the Middle Eastern countries like Egypt, Israel, from South America. What if those countries are totally shutting down and we can't get all the fresh food produce in, bearing in mind it's still quite chilly in the UK. We haven't quite got into our season for agriculture yet. So you do wonder about food shortages. And the more people are getting this, if it's going to increase exponentially, it means the less people are working in food manufacture and all that, or even in basic utilities, because of course everyone in water supply, electricity, keeping your internet and your broadband going, your mobile phone service alive, they're still working now. But if they have lots of shortages in the utilities or food manufacture and distribution, we could see shortages. So if this does go on, that's definitely going to be something to look at. That could be quite a problem. So we know that this lockdown, it's quite interesting how some people have really adapted. And do you see all the kind of people policing people? On social media, it's full of people encouraging other people to lock down, which in a way you think, gee, that's great. You know, it's nice that we're all encouraging each other. But in another way you think, gee, haven't the government done a great job of getting people to police other people? And then you hear of people ringing up the cops to report on neighbors who aren't obeying the curfew. So we now have an East German situation where your neighbors are behaving, you know, like your policemen and ringing the police, acting like, you know, the Stasi. So that's quite a scary thing, that we are now ratting on each other and we're not really working together, we're policing each other. That to me seemed, you know, kind of unsavory. You can look at it in a good way and say, wow, community spirit, all that, but you can look at it in a bad way. It could go either way. What's also interesting, and I've mentioned it before, countries that a lot of political protest like France, Chile, possibly Italy as well, with the whole separatist thing in Catalonia, well, that's all shut down. Now there's no protest. It's all calm. Germany hasn't been that badly affected, which is a very interesting case, probably because they don't need it. They've got a kind of very organized society. They don't need to clamp down. You notice that the migrants are still coming over the channel, so that hasn't been slowed, and we're not hearing anything about the borders between Greece and Turkey anymore. So this whole coronavirus is a great dead cat strategy, because there's just so much now that's gone out the news that we're not hearing anything about. So they could be rolling out 5G, they could be doing all sorts of things, but we wouldn't hear about it because there's really only one news story in town. And you notice now in Israel, this has also helped Netanyahu, with all those scandals going on around him, but he's kind of consolidating his position. And even in South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, who was fiercely criticized a few weeks ago because of South Africa's economy going to pot, now people are complimenting him and saying what great leadership he's doing and how he's really handling this well. So it's a great time for politicians to kind of, consolidate their power. Then we have the prospect of negative interest rates. I mean, all this money that's being pumped out, like with the universal credit that Donald Trump's doing and all that, it's all going to be paid back. But in the meantime, you're giving people a lot of money to buy resources which are scarce. So that's going to lead to inflation. Prices are going to hike. The value of money is going to go down. The value of pensions long term is going to go down. And with the Fed kind of pumping money in, buying up all the corporate bonds, buying up mortgage-backed properties, whether they be retail properties, private properties, it's a huge increase of power to the Fed, to the government, and definitely a sucking away of power from the middle class. So again, we see consolidation of power at the top and the middle class kind of losing ground, just people in the middle being squeezed, which is the whole idea of globalism. So there we go, just some ideas for you all to ponder on. I'm sure we'll be chatting soon about this, and I hope the sound quality is going to be good on this one. Take care, guys. Keep well, and thanks for listening. Thanks very much for listening and supporting me and for the great comments.